Hey everybody, so today we're going to continue our conversation where we're just breaking down the different testimony that took place during the Chad Daybell preliminary hearing. Now today we're going to be kind of jumping back to the very beginning of this with Detective Hermosillo's testimony. Now remember, he is one of the detectives with the Rexburg Police Department. He was one of the first people, doing the welfare check, interacting with Chad and Alex, and seeing, all of these red flags go off. So I'm just going to talk about some of the testimony that stuck out to me. So a couple of real quick things, he talks about doing the welfare check. We learned JJ's real name during that. And we also get proof that yes, Chad and Lori were actually married. This really did happen. Now let's circle back to that welfare check. Now in regards to that, so now he says that he makes contact with Alex Cox. And of course he's like, is Lori home? And Alex is like, no, she's not. And then he's like, look, is JJ home? Look, I'm here to do a welfare check. This is why I'm here. And he said when he asked about JJ that initially Alex didn't say anything, but he just turned and looked at Daybell. And this is the part that I'm just like, my God, you can just see right through these people. Now Hermosillo says that he asked him again, look, where is JJ? And this is where one of many lies comes through. And he says that he's with Kay Woodcock. Well, obviously the detective is like, hello. I don't think that's possible because she's the one who made the welfare check. Then, he's like, look, I need to get a hold of Lori. How do I get a hold of her? What's her phone number? And Alex is like, I don't know her phone number. Now, one thing that I think is so interesting about this and all these lies that we see and how they're all coming out is that, this whole group is claiming all of this, oh, this is how it's supposed to be and we're chosen and we're this. But yet they are so, and I don't even want to say careful to cover their tracks because they were really sloppy about it, but clearly they knew right from wrong. Now, at this point on the stand, Rob Wood asked Hermosillo what we're all thinking. Which is, what did he think when Alex was like, I don't really know her, I don't have her phone number. And the detective was like, look, I thought it was really weird because we had already been doing some investigation surveillance type stuff, so we knew they were really close. Now Hermosillo recounts that, look, I asked him where she was at. I was told, Unit 107, so we headed over that way. Now he says when they were en route over there, he sees Chad Daybell approaching him in his black Equinox, and they stop and, they interact. And now during this, he's like, look, Chad, when was the last time you saw JJ? And Chad's saying that it was in Unit 107 in October. And then Hermosillo says, I asked Chad too, look, what's Lori's phone number? And he didn't have it either. And again, would ask, what did you think of this? And again, Detective Hermosillo's like, it was really suspicious because I know that they were just married a couple of weeks ago. This is the part with this group that just astounds me. And I feel like we're seeing like a huge part of entitlement, a huge bit of, not anticipating ever having to answer to anyone for these things because it's so sloppy. It's like they just didn't think, what are we going to do? I think we've all been able to sit here and say it seems like, well, they all thought we were going away on the 22nd. And that could be a huge part to it. But I also think that these people just thought they were really above the law. Hermosillo recounts asking Chad Daybell, well, how do you know Lori? And he's like, well, I met her a couple of times through Alex. So again, this is completely shady. And at this point, if you're doing a welfare check for a missing child and all of these things have happened, something bad has taken place. Now, finally, Hermosillo recounts that, yeah, Chad Daybell did cough up Lori's phone number. And basically, they're like, well, look, why weren't you giving this to us? And Chad's like, well, I felt like I was being accused of something. And I'm just like, yeah, it's because you feel guilty. Now, like I said, this causes major concern and more officers all brought in. They get a search warrant, but they aren't able to really obtain it until the following day. Now, this is when, if we remember back to where we start hearing these things pop up in the beginning of this investigation. They searched 3 apartments. They found JJ's prescription pills. And one of the things, all the clothes were gone. And then they found the rental agreement to that storage unit. Now, they also got a search warrant for that. And, you all recall they found children's items in there. They found clothing in there. Now, this is a part that I go back to. So now that we're able, again, to start seeing the evidence and the testimony come out on the stand, and he put these pieces together, everyone's different stories. Let's remember back to Melanie Pulowski's interviews that she did on East Idaho News, and she was on there basically saying, look, Lori and Chad had planned this trip. This wasn't just some up and leave town. This was a planned thing. Now we can sit here and look back and I'm just like, really, girl? Really? That's your answer for that? It is so obvious that they were running from the police. And so again, it's not like we ever really believed much of what she was saying to begin with, but this just shows us much more how much she was lying and covering up for them. It becomes clear that, yeah, people did live in some of these things, but they have all hit the road. Now Wood walks us through some of the testimony about when the order was written for Lori to produce the children. And obviously, you know, I remember when this popped off, and this is when I first started becoming really aware of this case. You know, and at first I can remember thinking, oh, if something at the next level will happen, she'll produce those kids, you know, yada, yada, yada. No idea we would be looking at what we are now. Now he says, look, surveillance was done down in Hawaii and whatnot, and yet we never saw any signs of children. Now let's talk about the search warrant at Chad Daybell's house. So he's talking about that, you know, they go there with the search warrant, and basically they're like, look, you can, you know, stay here, but you're going to be accompanied by, you know, a detective, somebody. You can talk with your lawyer, or, you know, you can leave or whatever. And Chad decides to go and sit in his truck and basically watch them. Now, Hermosillo will say on the stand that Chad was basically on the phone the whole time, and he's like looking over his shoulder. Now, at this point, we know at least who one of those phone calls was to. You know, again, it's very interesting to piece all of this together. And Hermosillo says, look, Chad was continually looking over his shoulder intently, he said. And so Wood basically gets it to where it's like, you know, did you ever go stand in the spot that Chad was and turn around and look? And he's like, yeah, I did. And I was looking at the pond area. So again, you know, it's just so interesting how guilt just pours off of these people. You know, Chad is just sitting here basically pointing and saying, oh my God, don't throw me in that briar patch. Now, during this part of the questioning, this is, again, one of those parts that's very sobering. It brings this whole case back to what it is about, which are these two children. And, you know, Hermosillo is walking us through the discovery of the remains, how that went down. And again, we're seeing Larry and Kay in the background. Now, this is one of the first times they're hearing, you know, probably these gruesome details, and at least in, you know, an open public forum like this. And it's so hard. My heart goes out to them having to hear what horrible things were done to these children. Now, one thing I thought was very interesting when he was describing the remains of JJ, and he's talking about the extensive amount of duct tape that was like all up his arms, on his wrist, and he described what was like a ball of duct tape on his hands. And it just made me wonder, why did they go through such measures to secure his arms and hands like that? Now, let's talk about some of the cross-examination with Pryor. Now, Pryor goes in right from the beginning, picking some of this testimony apart, and he establishes that no, Hermosillo did not record all the conversations that he had in the beginning of this case. Now, at one point, Pryor starts to just almost dig, and he's like trying to find out, you know, did you talk to Melanie? Did you talk to Emma? Did you talk to Garth? Did you talk to this person? Did you write a letter to Santa? Have you seen the Easter Bunny this year? You know, I mean, you name it, he wants to know if they talk to him. You know, and finally Woods is like, no, objection. You know, he is on a fishing expedition. He is trying to low-key find out what evidence we have. And Wood is like, look, this is a preliminary hearing. This isn't the trial yet. You know, and Pryor's like, well, look, you're the one who chose to have, you know, Detective Hermosillo up there for 2 hours. I'm allowed to ask these questions. And the judge basically meets in the middle where he's like, you know what? He's allowed to ask, you know, did you interact with this person, that person, but we can't get into the content of these conversations. I do think that Judge Edens is being very fair so far, and I think he's being very patient. Now, Pryor goes in and starts grilling because remember, because these conversations weren't really recorded, you know, and this is in relation to that statement that Hermosillo is saying, Chad said, well, I don't know Lori very well. And basically Pryor's like, we've already admitted that, you know, you can't remember everything and da. And again, this is where attorneys are going to be able to pick these things apart, you know, because at the end of the day, it's he said, she said. Now, during this part, Pryor's trying to interject saying, well, you know, Daybell said this or that or whatever. And Wood again is like, I ain't having it. You know, he's like, look, if your client wants to make a statement, then they can get up on the stand and do that and put themselves up for a cross-examination. But you're not going to slide his testimony in like this. Again, you know, this was a very good insight into what we're going to see with Pryor. He is not going to leave any stone unturned, and we are going to be here for every minute of it. Now, if you want to watch some more of my commentary on this case, just click the videos that are going to pop up here. Thank you everybody for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you later.